Yeah, thank you very much for joining this first session of Easy Talk for Common Good. My name is Olga Andianova. I am a lecturer in management of the Open University in the Department of People and Organization, DPO. My focus of research is Common Good, HRM, sustainability and leadership. What I would like before I start, before I share my slides, I would like to also introduce Brian, who will be also our guest speaker, and also would like to share my slides so that you can see. So normally it goes very quick. Okay, good. Do you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Good. So this Easy Talks for Common Good event is organized by OU Common Good HRM Research Cluster as well as International Common Good HRM. The logo is presented here. As the majority of members of this network are here, and I'm very pleased to see all of you here. We also have invited here the students and alumni from the Open University, also masters in human resources management, as well as the people who are interested in HRM topic generally. The aim of this particular talk, what we wanted to do, it's literally to unpack and to actually create a really easy talk about a very complex topic, which is a common good. So what is common good and how these can be an innovative approach to HRM. That's why today it's no questions are stupid questions. All questions can be asked. This is why we are having the Easy Talk. So we will start with a small introduction about what we are doing, basically to introduce ourselves. Also, we would like then we move on to, I will stop sharing slides and then move on to our discussion with Brian. And then after our discussion, which will comprise just a few questions, so just easy talk questions, you can ask questions. Please, while Brian presenting, please feel free to put those questions in the chat or also ask later as you wish. And then at 11 o'clock, so after 1 hour, we will move on to networking and we will decide either we will do this in the breakout rooms or we can stay in the main room depending on how many people would like to stay. Okay, so this would be it. Let's move on first. So this kind of icebreaker. So as you know, today is Human Resources Professional Day, which I would like, and we would like really warmly congratulate all human resources managers and directors and assistants and training and development officers, everyone who are involved in this profession. And I would like maybe to have some a quiz, let's say. So please answer if it's all right. So the first question, what do you think, how many human resources professionals exist in the world? So, and Brian, can you help me to facilitate and to answer if it's okay? So how many, please estimate how many professionals are in the world?
Well, everybody's in business seems to be a HR professional today. At least everybody has an opinion. So I'll answer it that way.
Okay. So how many would it be? So it's because I cannot stop sharing.
150,000.
150,000 worldwide.
More?
Worldwide. More. Some
Well,
more
depends how you
guess?
define.
Yeah.
Is it
in the yeah.
Sorry. Is it around 5 million?
5 million. Oh, nice. Nice guess. Really good. Any other guesses? Put in the chat. So Brian, if you see chat, this would be great.
I think it's much more. I'd say probably more towards 100 million people.
But it depends how we define HR professionals, of course.
Okay, yeah. This is good. Good question. So according to the statistics, so that it's 35 to 70 million. So how it's calculated is that HR professionals typically present around 1 to 2% of workforce in most industries. And if we have 3.5 billion people last year, so we would most probably end up with 35 to 7 million HR professionals worldwide, which is remarkable, isn't it? So that's why this Human Resource Professional Day, it's quite affects a lot of people then. Thank you for your answers. Another question, when Human Resources Professional Day was introduced, what do you think? What year? Also in the chat, if somebody. Is it something old or something already exists? So when was introduced for the first time?
I think in this century it was introduced probably after year 2000.
Exactly. Yeah, very good. Very good. So it's actually introduced in back 2030 by Governor Sir Patrick Allen. And be honest, I did not know that he was a Jamaican public figure who was very known for community-oriented actions. And he was a teacher, lecturer. So he introduced actually this day for to reward a really valuable contribution of HR professional. Thank you, Louise, and thank you all who answered in the chat. And the last question, what program is the most supported by HR professionals? So your guess, what programs in an organization is the most supported by HR professionals?
What do you mean by program?
So, or what area do you think it's the most program or activities?
Recruitment.
Recruitment. Okay. So, any other guess? Any other?
Payment and payment and reward.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good. Any other guesses?
Employee relations.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah. Almost there. Almost there. Some more guesses?
Training and development.
Yeah. Training. Yeah. It's good guesses, but according to the latest, the latest statistic from CRBD, actually in 2012, 84% of companies introduced mental health support programs for employees, which were actually driven by HR professionals. So meanwhile, HR professional is not only involving in recruitment, training and development and payroll. Of course, it's a change maker, and HR professionals are also leaders to facilitate the so like Victoria also mentioned, the employment relations through specific programs which affect or which deal with a lot of ethical dilemma, social justice, but also helps the employees to, for example, overcome difficult situations. So I hope this was a mini quiz. You like it. So this was on, and it was interesting to interesting facts. If you like sort of quizzes, we can have those later on. So in the following meetings as well, or easy talks. So thank you very much. Now I wanted just to say or tell what we are doing or who we are. So we are International Common Good HRM Research Network, which was established by Brian, and Brian will maybe talk later about it. But this is, at the moment, we are roughly 65 members internationally, and we are focusing on the research on sustainable human resources management and particularly common good. So what we are also doing, we are encouraging and support research in discussion about common good HRM, which are located or was, so seminar work on this topic was produced in 2020. So if you like, you can look up for this publication by Ost, Matthews, and Müller-Kamen. I hope that Michael is also there. And we also facilitate collaboration around those topics. So we are, like I said, it's a mix of academics from different universities. As you can see, we have a steering committee, and the members of steering committees are also there. It's also a combination of people from different universities across the globe. And what we do, we definitely do a research projects and also the international collaboration. We are also having the Common Good HRM conferences, which we are participating in HRM and also EGOS. You will see us. We're also organizing the international conference, which, for example, next one will be in March 2025. So if you like to join, please feel free to do so. We also are arranging the collaborative events in terms of teaching. So, for example, I was participating and joined the teaching courses in VU, for example, and we also collaborate in developing some of materials in terms of teaching and case studies, for example. We're also engaging in practitioner networks, as well as organizing the public events. So, for example, Easy Talks for Common Good will be 3 times a year. So like September, next will be in December and February. We also publish in the special issues, and also other publications are part of our work. And we're also having a newsletter. If you would like to subscribe to newsletter, so that Stephanie will be very pleased to, if you would like to contact her. In terms of the Common Good HRM cluster at the OU, it was established last year, thanks to Brian for inspiring and actually driving this network. So we have established this, and you will find this online if you like. So under RIF, Research into Employment, Empowerment and Future, it's a cluster, independent cluster of the many colleagues who are focusing on researching critical management issues mainly, as well as different areas of employment relations. We also have mainly, so we are focusing on innovation in people management, which explores the common good approach to HRM, and I'm a cluster lead for this cluster at the OU. At the moment, we do have running 2 major projects, reducing impacts from hazardous waste in the UK and hybrid work in academia. So if somebody is interested in those topics, please feel free to reach out to me. And we have a new PhD student, Victoria, who will also join us in September. So I'm very, very pleased to have her here and also working with me later on this cluster. In terms of the, as you know, Open University has an excellent HRM, a master program, and this is, I don't know if you have heard so about the general composition of the master program. It's definitely a good investment if you would like to become a high impact HR leader. And I did this master myself, so I really enjoyed, and this program was redesigned just recently by adding a lot of new contemporary issues, material about contemporary issues like ethical dilemma, sustainable HRM, and also EDI a lot. So this will, of course, help the HR leader to build or handle these critical issues with confidence. And also here, it's, as you know, what is difficult is to balance this organizational objectives with fairness and integrity. This is also exactly what this program is about, how to handle these difficult parts. So, and more details, as you will see, there is a deadline for application for Masters in Human Resources. I think it's 10th of October. So if you feel that somebody would be interested, please feel free to pass on this information. And this would be it. I would like to introduce Brian, our guest speaker for this session. And Brian is a professor, as an assistant professor, right, in University of Vienna. He has really a focus of research, common good HRM. He is a really excellent researcher and put the foundation for common good HRM. He is also interested in developing sustainable framework in neoliberalism, meaning how to unpack this kind of challenges what human resources professionals have in their work. Yeah, Brian, do you want to maybe add something later? So because I would like then stop sharing. So if you like, someone would like to contact me, please feel free to drop me a line. And I would like to stop sharing and we move on to a discussion. Okay,
Right,
any
so is it general discussion or do I talk?
Yeah, so exactly. So now we would like to then to move to the questions we have prepared, right? Yeah. So I would like to ask you, so as a main speaker, right? So why do we need actually common good HRM?
Well, good morning, everybody. I hope there are no hecklers today. It's a town hall meeting, so I hope there's going to be no hecklers like the Labour conference yesterday. But I do get a lot of heckles, if you're the English-speaking hecklers, disruption at conferences. And it seems to be always the same question, just like hecklers in conferences and town halls. It seems to be always the same. One guy there has a grievance about something and shouts it out. And I have this feeling that seems to happen an awful lot with regard to HR and the role of HR, and especially trying to introduce a new concept. A lot of people feel threatened. And so that's the situation. So it's great to have you here today. I won't talk too much about myself because we don't have that much time. But the first thing I'd like to say is the introduction, the details that HR, that's the most popular program, has to do with health and well-being and mental health. Said to me, one thing, it's nice that they're doing this HR, but it also is for me a reflection is that how HR defines and business defines the good, what's good for people, tends to be very context and trend related. We used to have diversity, we used to have resilience, then now we have mental health, not everywhere, and we also have sustainability. So we have these trends, and an awful lot to do is now sustainability is the good thing to do. It's good for people, it's good for society. So definitions of the good and what is good are ambiguous, and not always, basically it's a very ambiguous term. And that is that offers us a challenge, but it also gives us an opportunity. So the question is actually not do we need, but it's a very interesting question. It's does common good HRM exist? Now, in order to answer this question, it depends. I would answer that in saying it depends on your intent or your research motivation. Does common good HRM exist? People ask me in conferences, very nice, but does it exist? Well, it depends if you want to take an empirical approach. If you take an empirical approach, you want to describe reality as it is. We do empirical work. Does common good, whatever that is, exist? And then we use a scale and we measure it and so on. But the other from philosophical approach, you can also take a normative approach, and you could say, well, my role is, or my intent is not to describe reality as it is, but basically maybe to suggest how reality should be. Right? So there's a normative approach, and I do tend to take in normative ethics, and that tends to be a conflict between empirical researchers and more normative approaches, basically saying researchers should be objective and shouldn't be making normative proposals and normative suggestions. And I say, well, let's have a thought, let's have a think about that. Maybe we can do both. So it depends on that. Now, there are basically two debates going on. And I'll give 5 minutes for the first debate and 5 minutes for the second, if I manage it. The first debate is, there is a general debate in philosophy and economics, not so much in management, is about what is common and what is good and what is the common good. And the second debate that is going on is mostly in HR, also in negative, is what is sustainability? How do we find sustainability? What do we mean by it? A common good HRM basically attempts to link both of these debates, what is common, what is good, and what is sustainable. So we basically could say that common good HRM is a multi-stakeholder approach to sustainability. That's why it's a type 4, a new type within the narrative of sustainability. To keep it simple, it's probably more than that. Common good HRM could be maybe something that's not even to do with sustainability as it's understood. It could be to do with social justice. We could replace sustainability with social justice as well. So that's getting too confusing. Keep it simple. Common good HRM basically is a critical multi-stakeholder perspective on sustainability. The definition of common good, I'll do 5 minutes on common good and then on common good HRM. The definition, according to the Stanford Encyclopedia, I'm not the expert, I'll read it. Basically, the common good in any community, it's community, of course. In any community, the common good consists of the facilities and interests that members have a special obligation to care about the virtue of the fact that they stand in a set relationship with each other. So that basically what we're saying is it's linked to this idea of a social obligation. It means that the common good basically means that it refers to the facilities, whether material, cultural, or institutional, that the members of community provide to all other members in order to fulfill a relational obligation. So basically what it's saying, the common good is basically what a community, a group, a family, an organization, a team, a network decides what it is. We decide what is our common interest, and then we attempt to, so we could have this sort of effect. And that would be the idea of what the common good could be something general. There is a philosophical approach that the common good is something normative, but there is also a very practical approach to saying the common good, as in regard to business, is basically what an organization defines it to be. What is our common interest? Now, there is difficulty, because that means that every organization and every group can have a different understanding of common good. That could cause a problem, is that then it's difficult to achieve. If that the problem there would be cultural relativism, that if everybody's good is as good as everybody else is, then we have no standardization. We can't develop scales. We can't measure anything because it's very subjective. So we have and that's exactly what the problem we have with diversity, and the idea about woke is everybody's understanding of gender and inclusion, it tends to be different. So we do have, because people are afraid, because they want pluralism, people are afraid of actually setting a normative standard, because this idea of moral culturalism and context. So I think it's much better and easier to say, to agree, let's not go into debate about what common good is, but basically agree is think about the different questions. Think about basically saying is, when we're thinking about the good, what we want, what is the what is the purpose? What is the purpose of our collaboration, of our organization? What do we want to achieve? Yeah, what's the purpose of business? And then think about what do we want to actually achieve together as a society? Why are we in an organization? Why are we in teams? What are our shared interests? First decide on that in the local, so really in a local context, decide what is good for us. But a very important point is, it doesn't matter what we decide, it always has to be human-centric. The goal of common good always has to be human flourishing, individual human flourishing, not collective human flourishing, that could come, but individual human flourishing. So we basically, and we decide are we focused on, are all our decision making, our strategies, do they positively contribute to human well-being? That can be mental health, that can be confidence, that can be trust, that can be democracy. But basically at the end of the day, does every individual in our collective society, family, organization have the opportunities to be an active member of this society and to flourish as a social being? That's linked to the idea that people are not selfish, people are actually social, interactive human beings.
Brian,
right.
Would you mind just ask you a clarification question?
Yes.
Human-centric approach. We do, or at the moment, there is a huge sort of tendency. For example, it comes a suggestion from CPDs to take that HRM would take, or taking the human-centric approach. This is exactly what you mentioned, and this is exactly what we would like to unpack more. And right, how this human-centric approach would relate to common good, HRM. Is it the same, or is it slightly different?
No, there is a problem with the so-called human-centric approach. There is a problem. And basically what I say, there are three problems. And basically, the three problems that I see here is, one is the definition of what is human-centric or good. And organizations tend to say what human-centric is investing in individual well-being. And that's always linked to a win-win for the organization. Basically, the organization said is a good HR strategy that is focused on the human is per se good for this individual. So it's linked to an idea of good and well-being that is always linked to business purpose. It's always a win-win. Okay, so there's a problem of definition there, is that who decides what is good? People are not normally asked what is good for them. Basically, it's given. It's a given. A good business, a human-centric approach, mentoring, investment is automatically good for this individual. It's a very inside out. It's always in the background, the business advantage. Okay, so there's a problem with that. It actually could be in conflict with what my well-being is. Maybe I don't want mentoring. Maybe I don't want creative development. Maybe I don't want more responsibility. So it's always actually mental health interventions often why should organizations be investing in mental health? Is not their mental health a very private thing? Maybe I should be maybe that's something for society or better healthcare facilities. So it's this idea is that what's good is for the organization is always good for people. We do have so that's the first problem. The first problem is who defines what is good. Okay, normally it's HR and businesses, and who defines what sustainability is? It's normally organizations, strategies. It's always economics. It's always economists. It's always management. It's never society. It's very rarely the employees. So human-centric is not necessarily democratic. So that's the first problem. The second problem is we have a freeloader problem. A free rider problem is that if we have this idea of self-interest and communal interest, that means if people invest in self-interest, HR, individual mental health, well, maybe that's actually in conflict with society. This idea, the original idea of the common good is that there is no duality difference between self-interest and societal interest. In fact, societal interest includes and incorporates self-interest. But on the other side, in a neoliberal society, when we say self-interest, what is good for your individual mental health or well-being, maybe that's at the expense of the collective well-being. So we have to be very careful in saying it. That's why common good would prioritize the collective approach, the collective societal well-being, in the idea that there is no inherent difference between a good functional society, a good functional organization is actually good for the individual. So it's a shift away from these narrow focus on individual investments in individual human-centric. It's more, let's say, communal. It's communal centric. That is also human. Humans are a part of society, but it focuses on creating healthy relationships between people and not just individual separate people then joined together. It's more to do with the relations, the interactions, creating the structures and processes that people have the room to self-develop. So it's based on this obligational, and we have an obligation, and so to speak, it's focused on then, and that would lead me to the third point. The first point is definition. The second one is the people wait then for the advantages, and the third thing is the idea of individualism, is that our business models are based on that people are basically selfish and competitive human beings. A common good approach does not have this idea. We basically say that people do actually cooperate and collaborate in society, in families. They don't fight all the time. So why should organizations be driven by self-interest? And our families and our communities are not. We've seen this in the flooding in Lower Austria. It's not driven. Successful, flourishing societies and organizations and teams are not driven by self-interest. They're actually driven by a sense of shared obligation to each other as human beings. People are social human beings. And that's missing, I would argue, that's missing in business models and in neoliberal approaches. So that's basically the three problems that we have about a definition, what is good, who defines that. The idea is that if we focus on the idea that we have this slip between self and society, the free rider problem, and that people simply won't engage in sustainable agendas. They'll wait till I get a cash payment, till I get some sort of promotion, till I have my own self advantage. And we see that with a lot of sustainable agendas, is that organizations are waiting till they actually see an advantage and then they jump on the train. But that's going to be too late. That's not working. And the third issue is the idea of this focus on the society's motivation is basically individual. So in order to change behavior for sustainability, we have to sort of give incentives, mostly cash incentives, or we force people, we regulate and we control and we force people to actually change behavior, which doesn't work. So this idea is that people are only individually motivated. A common good approach would say alternative, no, let's appeal to shared meaning. Let's create a culture of trust and trust and democracy and inclusion. It's to do with democracy. That's coming to the solution, and then culture, a change culture, positive culture for sustainability will result in people changing their attitudes, not because they are forced to, or not because they see an advantage, but because that's how people work. That's how humans actually interact and engage in the real world out there. So that's the idea behind it. The common good is to do with human flourishing. So the solution, let me just shift
Yeah,
really
just
5 minutes.
lead me to question today, maybe some examples
So
if you could.
So the question is, what is common good? Common good is what we decide it to be. We can take a normative approach, which I do. We basically say it's probably better. What is common good? It depends what people decide is good for human flourishing in an organization. And that could be an individual approach, that could be a collective approach, that could be a materialistic approach. It depends. But very important is it's the focus is on individual human flourishing, but how we get there has to be a democratic processes of workplace democracy. So it's based on the idea of, in order to flourish, I have to have the opportunities to be an active citizen of society. So organization behavior. I have to be actually the opportunities, the resources, the training, the skills, the schooling. I have to have these support systems that I can, if I want to, engage as an active citizen, like voting or engaging actually in decision makings in organizations. So without workplace democracy, I can't have common good. I can't have any sort of individual or collective well-being. So it's based on the idea of a common good. HRM actually says we have to include, it's a multi-stakeholder theory of sustainable HRM. Now shifting, and I'll really go very short, the idea of sustainable HRM has the same problem as the idea of common good. The idea of sustainable HRM has the same three problems. It doesn't know how to define itself. It's mostly defined. We have green HRM, we have corporate social responsibility, we have different, and they haven't worked. So we have these problems that we haven't got a standardization. We don't have a standard definition. The second is sustainable HRM. People are basically not trusting. They have a mistrust in HRM. They're not accepting. They're waiting. Employees are not embracing this agenda because they see, well, what's in it for me? This idea of win-win. Always has to be a win-win. But there is a problem with the win-win. Is always the casino always wins. But organizations always, an outside in approach, the power is always in organizations. So that means that you can only have a win-lose if you have a top-down approach. There is no win-win for employees if the solutions, such suggested sustainable solutions, are given from top down and always have this strategic mind frame. We have to create new profits. We have to make profits. We have to have new market share. That's, people see through that. It has to be on human flourishing, not on profit maximization. You can make profits and you will make profits and you can create green jobs, but the focus of sustainability has to be human flourishing. That can include economical flourishing, but it also has to have a stronger focus on flourishing societies and, as we know now, the flourishing the environment. So we have to shift our mental and say, for me, as the common good, basically a more holistic approach to it. And that's what common goods do. We basically say that the other forms of sustainable HRM have simply not recognized that we don't have a fair playing ground, is that these sustainable agendas are not including, they are not human-centric. Even social corporate responsibility is not human-centric because it basically does not ask people what they want. It's not it's basically a standard agenda that's mostly focused on economic advantage. Now, we had these. I give you the three solutions that I suggest for common good, and then we'll debate. The problem of cultural relativism and the idea to be pluralistic, lots of opinions are very good. People are always saying this to me, Brian, you can't have a normative approach. Everybody defines their own common good, the self-interest. What's in my self-interest? Mind your own damn business, as Waltz was saying. Mind your own business. I decide what is good for me and my family. But wait a minute, it's not your own damn business. Sustainability is our business. So the state has to get involved, organizations have to get involved in these issues, and we have to include people. We have to include employees to get them involved. But so we shouldn't be minding our own damn business. We should be always be nosy about everybody else. And if we see that someone is not getting involved and engaged in sustainability, we should call them out and say, wait a minute, that's not fair. That's discriminatory. That's you can't pollute your water. That's in England. Actually call it out. It's about citizenship. So it's about the answer to cultural relativism is being context specific. Actually asking, is my organization doing all it can to be sustainable? Yes or no? And if no, what can we do to make our organization in this time with our resources? And we ask the employees and we ask our customers and we reflect on that. That's the basis. And it has to be human-centric and human flourishing. And then we work back. It's reverse engineering. We don't begin with a sustainable agenda, SDGs, and work down. We decide, wait a minute, what's good? What is good for human beings? Clean air, good health, good relationships, and so on. Agency. We ask people. We know what people want. And then we reverse engineering. How can we that, with our limited resources, with our organizational type, with our cultural differences, how can we do our best to actually create the best possible situation or organizations that people can flourish? Some societies will be able to do that better. Other societies will have difficulty with this. America, with its individual approach, is going to be difficult than maybe a European country that has more collective social structures. It's and resources. So we have to be that's the idea of pluralism. So common good is actually pluralistic. The problem with free rider, well, and this idea of selfish, I wait too long, is basically I take Ostrom's framework, and it has consequences. You have to have strong rules and consequences. If somebody actually breaks the rules of sustainability, whatever that agenda, we agree on an agenda. First of all, we agree on an agenda, what we want to do in our organization. And if somebody then cares out and says, I'm not getting engaged, it has to have consequences. You have to have not just rewards, you actually have consequences, saying either you're a member of the society, you have this social obligation, or not. And we don't even see that in politics. If somebody breaks the rules, it has to have consequences. And the problem with our society at the moment is a lot of people, because they have power, it's a power problem. Because they have too much power, and it's not in management, is that they get away with it. We've seen that with the Volkswagen scandal, is that was a major damage for the company, and now the company has major consequences, and not just for the company, but for the 4 or 5 Standorten, there's locations where those people, there's unemployment, and the issue was because management decided that we would jump on the green agenda, but actually wasn't authentic. So we have to say, is our decision good for human flourishing? And then they would have realized, no, it's not. To lie and to cheat is not good for human flourishing. And it gets cut out in the end anyway. So that's the thing with this free rolling. We have to have rules and regulations. And the third problem of self-interest, but basically people are motivated by self-interest, Brian. You can't say let's be common and common good. And basically, well, we have to question the business models. Are we really motivated by just self-interest? Are we really? I'm not convinced. In fact, I totally agree. In our families, in our communities, in situations of stress, self-interest. There are always a few people who are self-interested and use it, but most people work together, collaborate according to the rules of Elmo Ostrom. So maybe I use this framework, Elmo Ostrom's framework for businesses, and it's based on common organizing and the idea of communalism from Charles Taylor, the idea that we are social human beings, we are not selfish individuals, we are not always selfish. We are selfish, and our own self-interest is good. Sometimes to have a break and think of ourselves is always good, but generally for big challenges like sustainability, then we have to, we don't have to place our self-interest, we don't have to be altruistic and say, I will prioritize the community. No, because self-interest and societal benefit always benefits me. That's the idea of the common good. So to finish up, what is common good? We decide what it is. Why should we do it? Because the frameworks at the moment are because of these 3 problems are not working. So how do we achieve it? Well, it's critical, pragmatic, and pluralistic. So we have a critical common good HRM as I define it. We have the definition. Published. It's on our network page. We'll send it out to you. You can read it. It's basically, I won't read it now, but it's critical. It basically says that we have to be aware that there's not a level playing field. Certain managements and organizations have more power than other people, and so we have to look at the disadvantaged people. Prioritize the needs of gender, of women, of poor, of the young people, of unemployed, and so on. We have to have social justice because there is not a fair playing ground. We accept that. Other people would say organizations do their best. We can't change this. That's how the world works. I say no. The lobbying we have this idea of lobbies, and we have this idea of power and inequality and disruption and corruption. They are not the natural rules of the world. Capitalism driven by this is not the natural way we live. We don't fight each other and compete every day. We cooperate more often than we compete. Competitiveness is good. I run and stuff is very good, but basically at the end of the day, you don't do anything. You don't play unfair. You try to be collaborative, to have the general and common human flourishing in your mind. So you can be selfish so long as you don't harm other people or limit other people in their chances to succeed. So it's being pragmatic. So we are critical. We are also pragmatic. We say that there is a solution. We're not like the old Marxists. We're more neo-Marxist, and we say that that we can change society. It's optimistic. It's not negative. We can. Managerial interest and employee interest and business interest and green interest can be solved, so it can be solved, but how can it be solved? Through pluralism, but through the idea of neo-pluralism, by creating network of collaboration in our families, in our societies, in our organizations, based on the idea of opportunities. HR can facilitate this, opportunities for active citizenship or citizen behavior, or what we would generally call, Ostrom would say, collective action, that everybody gets the opportunity. They don't have to. They can choose to disengage. I'm not interested. You don't have to vote, but at least everybody should have the right to vote. And also the local and organized voting area. So in an organization, you have to have structures where people actually can engage as citizenship and democracy and debate and negotiate. And at the end of the day, so long as we are focused on human flourishing and we have enough debate, room for debate and dialogue and deliberation, then the solution that will come will be the best solution for the common good. It maybe not the optimal. An alternative organization might be a better common good, more common good. Even an oil company can be common good if it listens to what the needs of people are. And so that's the idea. The idea is it's critical, pragmatic, and pluralistic. So I think I've spoken far too much and probably not as easy as you wanted me to be. So I'll open up.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent, Brian. You have so some applause to Brian. This is really great. Very well explained. Thank you very much. So what I like that you really highlighted the main elements, so sort of not on the positive side only as a wonderful solution, but as a journey actually to something what can be built. So it's a very emerging field of research. We are still sort of exploring different options, and this is one of the ideas and potentially a solution for bigger HR concept. Yeah. What I would like exactly, Lena mentioned. Yeah, exactly. So if you need to leave at 11, so UK time, absolutely feel free to do so. But I would like to open a floor to other people to ask questions. Exactly. Thank you, Philip. Absolutely, no problem at all. Thank you for joining. We have a question from Victoria. Brian, if you could explore further, where does utilitarianism come in? Mm-hmm.
Well,
or maybe I don't know, Victoria, if you like to.
Well, it comes as yeah, well, we're talking about. Sorry, do you want to?
No, I was just thinking about utilitarianism sort of generally, if we're thinking about maximizing sort of the best action for the best number of people. But then I was also thinking about what you were talking about with regards to social justice, and I suppose perhaps furthering that power imbalance, or perhaps overlooking those minorities, and I suppose furthering that inequality.
Well, to answer the question, I've had thought about this. Basically, utilitarianism comes. You're from Scotland? No, you're from North. Where are you from? Basically, the idea of utilitarianism and Mills, and also influenced what I would say, sort of liberalism later and neoliberalism as well. And the idea is that we don't have a normative idea of what is good. Basically, what is good is what is for the best interest of everybody. The problem with that is who determines what the best interest is. If we had a really fair society where people debate and negotiate, and we have pluralism, a pluralistic society where every voice and opinion has the same weight, then maybe we would find a utilitarian solution. The problem with that is we don't live in a fair pluralistic society. We live in a very unfair and increasingly unfair society where liberalism or liberal Democrats always argue that we just need to be open and fair based on good education. But not everybody has access to good education, not even in Europe. Not everybody's opinion is vote counts. We have lobbies, we have organizations with an awful lot of power. We take the example of the platform economy and AI. I just presented a paper in BAM and had this argument is that we need more regulation and controls, is that utility, we could say the internet could be a very useful tool for, basically it could be a very a very useful tool for everything, but it's not. And the reason is not the idea, the concept is the idea is that we have a power disbalance. So you're right, maybe that would be one way of doing it. We decide what is in the best interest of everybody. The problem is there's a power disbalance, and it's always somebody driving the narrative. And if we do that, then we can't achieve what is best for everybody without. My argument would be then we don't take utility as the foundation. We take human flourishing. So it's not a pragmatic performative. You perform, you're useful. Who are you useful for? You're useful for the economy? No. It has to be useful. It has to be human flourishing. So if we take common good, what's best for human and societal flourishing? I think then we're on a solid foundation. And that's but you're correct. That would be the answer to how I would address the challenge of liberalism. I'm not a big fan of liberalism. I think it's done an awful lot of damage. Open markets and so on. Because of this power.
Fantastic.
But that's a critical approach. That's a critical. If you're not critical and you say we have a plural society and people should just get on with it and everybody has the right, and it's to do with individual effort and energy. It's your own fault if you're unemployed, and if your career is successful, it's to do with you. If you have this sort of self-interest, sort of neoliberal philosophy, then you won't really be very happy with my common good approach. But if you say basically we are societal beings and we should be, and not everybody has the same equal opportunities in society, then you would mostly, well, we need maybe a different foundation. That's actually my argument, that we do need a different foundation.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions maybe to Brian, or maybe contra argument, or do you agree with what Brian is saying?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting to listen to this presentation. Brian, you mentioned about maybe cultural differences and the importance of people becoming active citizens. And I wonder just how can this be put into action, because there are a lot of obviously culturally specific ideas that dominate societies, because I observed when I moved from England to Italy that there were a lot of litter, for example, on the streets. But if you enter the house of a person, it's spotless clean. And when I was asking people why that contrast exists, they were saying to me that, well, everything that is outside of my house is a property of it's a responsibility of a council, so they have to clean it. But my house is my house, and I want to keep it clean and spotless. So, and I feel like there is all these different, ideas that are dominant in society. So you mentioned maybe in America it's very like, also self-oriented type of discourse is dominating. So how can we encourage all people to become active citizens and actually think about common good?
Well, basically, that's a very good question. I was in Italy, and it's terrible, the pollution and everything. I said, why is not? It's because it's not my responsibility. So a common good, without going to definitions of, we shouldn't go into this idea of woke debate. What's gender? What's responsibility? Where's the boundaries between private life, self-interest, and common interest, public good and private good? And that's what the debates are going on. I would basically avoid this debate. I would step back and say, and that's what we do, I simply say, let's not go down this rabbit hole. This rabbit hole, that's a rabbit hole. It can't be solved because every culture is different. So you don't do it. It's like Facebook. Don't engage in somebody who, or LinkedIn. Don't engage with somebody gives you a little bit of a, thing, well, I don't believe in gender. Don't engage. The best way of doing it is say, okay, stop. A common good approach, basically from philosophy, from Aristotle and from Thomas Aquinas, they basically say, stop. It's not about individual things. We're not going to solve the problem this way. If the problem is pollution or thing, we basically say, do you agree? I would ask this person who's Italians. The Italians have gone very right-wing now. So I would ask an Italian colleague, I say, okay, are people driven by self-interest, or are they members of society? Are they social beings, or are they is there anything in society? Margaret Thatcher says there's no such thing in society. Good. If you take this standpoint and say self-interest is the priority, there's only that, there's no thing in society, there's nothing to do with me, then you won't solve the problem. Then you will have dirty streets like they do have, and you have corruption like in Italy. If you want to live in dirty streets, then live in dirty streets. Okay? I don't want to live in dirty streets. So if I want to solve the problem, I have to say, okay, this is a collective problem. Litter in the streets is a collective action problem. No, it's like this freeloader. The council will deal with it, but in Italy they don't because they're corrupt. So it's not, in Austria, we put our dirt in the bins and it's collected because we have a more social system. So it's communal. So in Italy, I would say, well, do you want the problem to be solved? Yes or no? If he says, I don't want the problem to be solved, I don't care what's outside my house, then you won't have a solution. Then have a nice life. But sustainability and climate change will kill you. And maybe litter won't kill you, maybe with rats, but the idea of climate change and so on will kill us all eventually. We have to solve the problem of sustainability. So we can ignore it, as people are doing. It's not to do with me. The floods are in Austria, but I'm living on a hill. Or you say, hey, we have a collective problem. So we are members of a society, our town. The problem is litter in our streets. Okay, let's get together. I'm a member of this town. I talk to my neighbors. So I have a feeling, a sense of being a citizen. I'm a citizen of this small Italian town. Good. So that means I'm in a relation to my neighbors. I have either a good relation or a bad one, but I still am a relation. So if I'm in a relation to somebody, like in a marriage, I have a relational obligation. What is that obligation? That obligation is to give this person space, that this person can flourish. And the same again, that we can both flourish together. Litter on the streets, I can't flourish. That means we have to sit down and say, the problem is litter. We all have a social obligation to solve this problem. That's the first step, that we have a problem and that we have a social obligation. A common interest. So our common interest is clean streets. And then you can say, okay, how do we solve the problem? The corruption. The problem in Italy is I don't think the problem in Italy is that people don't want to live in clean streets. I think they say we can't solve the problem because we don't have the power, because the waste disposal and collection in Italy is controlled by the mafia, and politics is very corrupt, and the people are simply disillusioned. They are disappointed. They are simply, I think that it's learned helplessness. A lot of people in Italy and other countries like America, they simply say, we can't change the system. I ignore it. It's sort of a protection, a defense mechanism. So I'm actually convinced that if we sat down and say, do we want to solve this problem? The question, answer would be yes, but we don't know how to do it. And then I would say, well, let's take Ostrom's thing, collective grassroots action. Let's start cleaning up ourselves. Let's get a community network going, and we solve it through a grassroots thing. That would be a common good approach. So be very careful when people answer and say, I'm selfish, that doesn't deal with me. It could be a reflection. It could be a sign that people are disempowered. It's about power. If they had enough power, if the community actually, they pay their taxes, then of course it's the responsibility of the town to do it. But the problem is when the town doesn't do it, what's an alternative solution? And we have this problem with sustainability is that organizations and governments are not solving the problem of sustainability. The only way you can solve the problem of sustainability is individual collective action in our organizations, in teams, in our communities. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, Luisa, this is exactly the problem and mentality is we are facing every day, or the human resource manager are also sort of facing when we are working in an organization, that one department is responsible for one thing, another department is not. So how to actually create, and this is exactly what Brian is saying, that the Common Good HRM it's about facilitating this collaboration, because this is exactly what you, I totally agree with you. We are now working on hazardous waste project in the UK, and this is exactly that fly tipping in the UK has been really dramatically increased over the last few years. For example, comparison to last year, it's plus 6%. So fly tipping, this is only because UK does not have actually opportunity to incinerate. So either they incinerate elsewhere or they fly tipping. In Belarus, where I come from, it's also the same. And this is exactly this kind of fly tipping is left to the government, or councils, which are also not having capacity at all. So because it's really communal, so meaning that whole communal issues becoming an issue at some point of the organizations, how to deal with this. And you are absolutely right. There is a mentality and how to deal with this. This is perhaps a question mark for more research. Yeah?
Well, there is a very quick example. In Vienna. In Vienna, you used to have an lot of problem with dog poo on the pavements. Terrible. I don't know if it lives in Vienna.
What is this?
20 years ago.
What is this?
Dog poo in Vienna. It was terrible. Jason, hello. Terrible. You had to walk on the streets and in the danger of being run over because you couldn't walk on the pavements in Vienna. Hello, Jason. Nice to see you. You couldn't walk on the pavements because there was everywhere dog poo. And they said, okay, how do we solve the problem? People said and the argument was, people asked, why are you not cleaning up your dog poo? And people answered, that's not my responsibility. That's the council's responsibility. I pay my taxes. So the first thing what they did was they sent out, it worked. They sent out and said an advertising saying it's our responsibility, community pride. They basically said, we want clean streets. That's a reflection of our, don't you feel good Viennese? Aren't you proud of your city? So they created, or in the Bezirk, they created a feeling of pride, of being a member of this. They appealed to the social shared pride of being a member of Vienna. So the community aspect, and people were proud. Yes, of course, I'm aren't you ashamed that your district looks like that? Yes, I am actually. Now good. So it's sort of a shared meaning. And then say, okay, it's our collective problem. And they did two things. They fined everybody. They said, if you continue to do this, you'll get 50 euros you have to pay. Okay, that got people saying, oh, I have to, first of all, change behavior. It's this stick. But then they also, and this is the common good approach, they also invested in every street corner to have an area where they have the bags and where they have the area where the dog can go. And it worked perfectly. So it's a combined solution between a collective sense of responsibility, plus, of course, people are selfish, consequences, rules and regulations like Ostrom. And the third thing was providing the people with actually the capability, giving them the bags and so on. And it worked perfect. And in an organization where HR has a problem with a sustainable agenda, then you have to first ask people, well, do you want to be sustainable? If the employee said we're not interested in green policy, then you can't have it. You won't have a green organization. You can't impose green policies on employees if they are basically against it. But the argument to common good is not to be defeatist, is that people are generally want to be sustainable. They want to treat each other well. They want to have a good climate. They want to have social justice. That's the argument. If you don't agree with that argument and say that people are basically mean and selfish, then we won't have, then we are lost. But we are more optimistic, and HR then would basically, the first step then is, I actually have written the paper, the first step in change is changing the culture. A shared meaning, then you change behavior. You can't impose rails, say change behavior, do this. You first have to change the culture that people say, well, it's actually in our shared interest to change my behavior. And then can you help me? How can I change behavior? Then you give people the training, the resources, the time, whatever, to actually do that. But the first thing is creating a sense of citizenship, a sense of social, based on this idea of an obligation, a relational obligation. Again, I'm going too complex into it.
Yeah,
Will we solve the problem in Vienna?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Brian, for this example. Any other questions or sort of thoughts, ideas, agreement, disagreement? Yeah, Jason, yes.
Thanks very much, Olga. Thanks, Brian. So don't worry, I'm not a heckler to anybody else. I know Brian from over the last few years, so very supportive of Common Good HRM. Just a quick question. Thanks for your talk as well. It actually links back to what you were just talking about. What do you see as the potential role of HRM in facilitating Common Good HRM? I know you mentioned about culture and shared meaning, but how pragmatically do you see that? I've got my own ideas actually, but it'd be good to hear your own ideas as to how that could be facilitative, like the function.
Well, I've just written a paper. I've just come up with myself. Well, how can I do this? Well, because I'm moving on to practical things. We developed the conceptual. I think practically, one thing is that HR doesn't have the power. So HR has to critically reflect. First, reflectivity. HR has to say, okay, we are part of the problem. We are part of the problem because we haven't involved employees. We've been too managerial. We've been too strategic. Good. If we want to be, HR, we're talking about sustainable HRM. Most HRM people are no idea about sustainability. They're not interested in sustainability. They're interested in performance. Well, let's say we're in an organization where the HR management is interested in sustainability and he wants to, he has a motivation. So, but he doesn't have the power. So the first thing is to reflect and say, HR is part of the problem. We need to increase awareness with management, discussions with management. We want to make a stronger contribution to the green agenda. So to get the power to actually say we are interested in sustainability, please give us the responsibility for green agendas. Mostly they don't have that. Mostly it's in the marketing or the product development or the material or project management departments. HR normally doesn't drive the green agenda. So the first thing is saying is we are part of the problem. Sustainability should be to do with social, it should also do with social justice and democracy, and that's people, human-centric. If it's human-centric, we define sustainability as human-centric. We are the human experts. You have to give us the power. The second point then is to revalue work. It's basically to say to revalue work, to redefine our role and purpose, multi-purpose, and saying that, right, we now have the power. We also have the responsibility. HR has a central role to play and should take on this responsibility. And that means revaluing work. That means basically saying it's not work for employees. It's not just about material advancement. It's also to do with human well-being. It's to do with being personal development in organizations. People just don't go to work to earn money. Well, maybe they do increasingly in America and England, but if you have a good pay and you have a good social system, you go to work. Basically, what motivates you is a sense of being, a collective sense of development. I can flourish as a human being. I have pride in my work. So HR has to revalue work, and that could be, and that basically means asking people, redesigning tasks that people have more free round. Maybe not just accepting what skills people have and matching them to a particular job, but basically saying, challenging people and saying, well, would you like more responsibility, Brian? Do you need skills to actually have that? Would you like to try it, trial and error? If you make a mistake, it's okay, but maybe you can take on this responsibility or this new role. If you know it doesn't work, no shame. Trust, building up trust, mentoring, interacting, changing the role as a managerial function to more of a facilitator, a bridge. So that's changing the role, just revaluing their work, their role, and also the revaluing what understanding what actually work means for employees. An awful lot of employees don't realize that they can actually use work as for self-development, an area of self-development, and provide. And the third one is very important. So we're talking reflection, all the R's, reflecting, revaluing, and reallocating whatever limited resources they have to, that means time as well, time, resources for meetings, for negotiations, for dialogue, that people can actually participate, the democratic participation. Don't forget, the common good is basically to do with including people. They argue is if we talk enough, if we debate enough, we will find common interest, we will find common ground, and we will find a common solution to whatever problem that is. And if the problem is sustainability, waste or material, or it could be well-being, we can only find it through increased space and room for people to actually debate and negotiate. And that means maybe long-term thinking, investing time, resources, and training that are not just skills related, but actually capability building. You know, the idea of building, rather than just building skills, building capabilities. You know, investing in people that maybe they take their knowledge to another company, but that's the risk I take. That somebody, if I invest in somebody and they go to another organization, well, that's also good for the common good. It's for another company, but we sort of this mainframe, this openness. So reflecting, gaining the power, revaluing my role and what HR is, and revaluing the work, and third, winning and reallocating the resources, the mental, physical, materialistic, capital resources, and temporal resources that I have, with the focus of human flourishing. So that's the common good approach.
Thank you, Brian. Jason, do you agree?
Yeah, of course I do. Excellent, Brian. Well thought out, and thanks for the answer. That was excellent. And yeah, I mean, I've been pondering this as well for the last few months. And for those that don't know, I think Emily does. I've done a bit of research in the past on the area called workplace spirituality, and I wanted to sort of write something up this year. I just haven't had the chance. But I do see a big role, like Brian does, for the HR function, and the whole idea of how HR practices in particular could become more holistic through the sort of theoretical background of workplace spirituality. So, and of course that all links to flourishing and everything else. So, so I'm hoping to get back into that agenda to write something up. And what Brian's just said there is I'm on the same sort of way of thinking too. So excellent. So thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
Really good.
Well, let's link up. There is a paper just came out. It's not Pam's paper, is it? About spiritual leadership. They linked. Okay, they took. So he basically found a correlation between spiritual leadership and common good. They define common good as a reciprocal behavior, citizen behavior between employees. So they basically found a relationship between spiritual leadership. I'm not sure how to define that. Spiritual leadership, holistic, and actually change. So a mindset, spiritual leadership, and form of leadership, and actually changed employee behavior that could be considered for the common. So not my self-interest. People actually helped their employees, their colleagues more, supported them. So there is some empirical work out there already that links.
The foundation. Yeah, of course, that would really help towards changing that cultural mindset and everything else. So from the top down or wherever, bottom up, wherever. So I know Emily's done some work on that as well, I think, isn't she, on spiritual leadership? So so thanks for that, Brian. I'll be in touch.
Right. Connect through LinkedIn, connect through the network.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or privately.
But this would be really interesting, Emily, if you could, if we would keep in touch as well, because obviously this is what Brian suggests here. It's a good approach. However, if we come to the operational part, how to really come to the practices, there is no really mean or how to do this. Just an example, if we would like to create this kind of reallocation. We are still in the managerial mode. Reallocation means you need to analyze the job, job descriptions or job tasks. So do the Excel spreadsheet, and then to calculate basically what the person is doing. So this kind of spiritual mood is not there. You see, so it's not the totally missing. So that's kind of for me managerialistic approach to handle this kind of common good definition, or to bring people together to discuss their issues, is a barrier. You see, so how this spiritual element could be brought more into the everyday work of an HR professional, right? Yeah. Any Emily, you would like to say something?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for the talk, Brian. Yeah, I had really a lot of ideas that came up when you talked, because what I realized also through my research is that often when you bring up these buzzwords, people immediately have some sort of stereotypes coming up, and that may already create a sense of wanting to collaborate or not. Like even if you bring up the gender discussion, or when I was talking about spiritual leadership, and I recently held a presentation about it in a pool of researchers that are in very, very different areas, very aside from management and everything. And people immediately have ideas about what it is and decide that, they don't self-select in a group that is interested in their topic. But then when you really try to explain that the idea of spiritual leadership and spiritual beings can be so pragmatic and simply narrowed down to the sense of wanting to have a meaning in life and wanting to be part of a community, and that's really it, and then it can be filled with all additional spiritual details. That's when you kind of get people involved again and make them understand that they are part of these questions. And that's what I was also thinking when Brian held his talk, that you really need to learn to ask the right questions in order to make people understand that they are part of that they need to engage in finding a solution as well, that they are part of the group that is affected. And I think the solution really here is to find questions that make people understand that they should engage in these quests.
Yeah, it's about changing the narrative. Exactly. The first question I ask in my course, I have a Common Good HRM course, which is booked out, but probably not because of Common Good, because the first question I ask the students is, are you here because of Common Good? Nobody is here for Common Good, because it's just an interesting course with no examination. And the second question I ask is, it doesn't bother me. I'm teaching Common Good, which is nice, and English as well. Normally I teaching German, so bonus. And the second question I ask is, what's the meaning of life? What's the meaning? Why are we here? What's the meaning of life? And normally what comes back is, well, to be successful, to be, I say, okay, what's success? And then there's a conflict. And after a while, I think, and actually what actually is, we are spiritual beings. I don't want to go Frankl, but basically the Frankl search for meaning is basically, that's what we're doing. Our journey is that it's not about finding meaning. It's about not about creating meaning. And some people say you create your own meaning, and online and avatars and all that sort of thing. We have to create our own meaning. I don't agree with that. I think it's about generally people. There is a meaning to life, and the meaning to life is more to do with, it's transcendental, it's spiritual. We're not just social beings. We're not just economical beings. We're more social beings, but actually more than that. The common good. It's Catholic ethic. It's just one part of it. But basically, the common good idea is based on the common good is based on the idea is that we can achieve more. How you say that? It's individual flourishing, or is not an individual endeavor. It's basically in caritas. It's basically embedded in society. We need society in order to grow, but also the society is much better places when we are flourishing as individuals. So it's a reciprocal thing, and then we're talking about this idea of relationship and relations to something that's not just us, that goes beyond us. And something goes beyond us the all myself in, then is transcendental. That could be then connect to nature, to the universal God, to something bigger than ourselves. And I think we need to have this idea that life is spiritual, how you define it. We need to have a goal that is bigger than ourselves in order to grow. If we don't have a goal that's bigger than ourselves, then we can't grow. Then we basically say, well, I've made it. I can't change my, that's, and people, and so we actually always have to be challenged. And the big challenge is something that goes beyond us, and also beyond our narrow understandings. I have difficulty with that. The Mikkel Mulakama, my supervisor, is into spirituality, and when I hear spiritual thing, oh my God, spiritual leadership, and so we're going to start meditating 5 hours a day and all that sort of stuff. But actually, I'm a member of the Buddhist organization here in Austria, and I'm a very spiritual person. I just try to keep it private because the narrative, if you mention spirituality to managers, they're gone. And if that's why I don't talk about spirituality, but I do talk about meaning, as I mentioned today. People need some sort of meaning in their work that goes beyond fulfilling a task. It's not just about being rewarded. It has to have a sense of pride, a sense of what Rosa says, resonance. That goes beyond it's experiential. And I think that element of work, HR has that's what I'm talking about revaluing. Let's talk about revaluing work as a spiritual experience. If HR says work actually has a meaning for people, it goes beyond performance or organizational success or individual success, then we're opening, and spiritual leadership is somebody who actually embeds that and actually encourages that and leads by example. And there are organizations that have very strong spiritual leadership. They're not mainstream organizations, but there are and they are benchmarks, of course, and they are certainly common good.
Yeah. Brian, thank you very much. Emily, you had your hand right before we close. You wanted to say something, or it's fine.
Yeah, it's just like a quick anecdote that we have in one of the seminars where we also talked about the link of management and spirituality, because like many people self-identify as not religious or not believing in like spirituality, and then we came up with the first paragraph for law, the German law, that the human dignity is inviolable. And our lecturer simply asked, like, why is it inviolable? Like, why can we violate it? And this is when we like on an anecdotal level, made us understand that if we believe that there is something that should not be violated in our human sense, that this can also in a pragmatic way be seen as a spiritual belief.
Well, dignity is a value. We didn't mention the values. I think the common good also has values. We have them on our research agenda on the second. We have this research agenda we'll be sending out to you to join the network, join the LinkedIn, and we'll be sending the newsletter in the next 3 or 4 days. Lots of information in there, but always on the beginning is these values, the values of dignity, exactly. The values of reciprocity. And so dignity, human dignity and virtue, and a virtuous life is respecting people's dignity, and unvirtuous life is acting that damages people's dignity. And we see in the world, if we simply had these values, if we work according to these values, not spirituality or religious, but universal values, and then I'm normative again. If we've lost this idea of that due to cultural relativisms that are different values. No, there are certain universal values from a common good approach. It's Eurocentric. It's based in Greek philosophy, but there are values that I adhere to, and common good comes from, and they are the values of dignity, respect, and basically we should be in virtue, basically. Yeah.
I think it's a really good topic actually for the next Easy Talks, isn't it? Yeah, so values, the common good values, and how these can be embedded in the HR practices. This would be really interesting to discuss. On this positive note, I would like to close this session, our first Easy Talks for Common Good, which was really a starting point for a bigger conversation. And I would be really pleased to see you all again next time. So I will stop recording now. Yeah.
Right. Then please join the link. The newsletter